concept that we're going to review is function. We've already used functions quite a lot in this course. In JavaScript, we define the functions this way. So we use a function keyword and we can provide a name or not. So in this case, let's get the function name card. And we have the parentheses where we can specify the arguments or inputs that the function takes. And there's a body where we specify the logic of the code or the statements that the function actually executes. And at the end, the function may return a value or not. So in this case, let's write a really simple function that just prints a string. So this is going to say this is a string. Actually, I just say this is a card. Okay, so we've got a function. The name is a card. It takes no input and it just prints a string. To use this function, I can just say card and invoke card. And since it doesn't take any input, I would expect this to just print this is a card. So when I run that, I get this is a card. Pretty simple. Let's write another function. We can write another function this way. So I can say box is a function. And box takes size and color. What this function is going to do essentially is it's going to return an object, let's say. So it's going to return an object that's going to have the size, it's going to have the color, and some info. So we're just going to say box of size, and color. So nothing really fancy, just a really simple function. We basically just return an object with three properties: the size, the color, and info. And we can use this function as follows. So we can say let's pass size of blue, and I'm just going to call the function twice. In this case, I'll give it 10, and let's say red. So if we run this, when we first invoke the box a function, we get this object back that has three attributes as we've defined: the color, the info, and the size. And the second time we invoke box, it returns another object with color, info, and size. So the difference between the first function and the second function is really twofold. One is this doesn't take any inputs and this takes two inputs, and this doesn't return anything and this returns an object. The next thing we're going to see is, in this case, this function takes a number and it takes a string. A function can also accept a function. So let's imagine we want to define a function draw. So this function draw takes a function, so let's just call it box for whatever reason. We can call it whatever we want. We would have a response because we know that this box function is going to return an object. So I'm going to say 20 and yellow. And then I can return, let's just print this out. So let's just say drawing so we're just going to draw that info. Then I can just call draw, and then we'll pass this function to draw. All right, so when we run that, we get drawing box of size 20 and color yellow. So let's look at what's going on here. So I have a function box. It takes two inputs and it returns an object for me. And I define another function draw, that accepts another function. So you can think of this as a wrapper function. It essentially wraps this function, and here I'm using the function that I passed in, and I'm doing something else with it. Like in this case, I'm actually just printing a string. So when I call drawBox, it's going to pass this function to my draw function. Then this function gets executed, and we know that this returns an object. So this response is going to be an object with 3 attributes, and we're just using the info attribute of the object to generate a string that we print out. So we know this is going to return this string, and then we'll concatenate that string with drawing, and that's how we get this. So we've seen that a function can also take another function. So the other thing that we're going to also show is a function can return a function. So let's say I want to clean up after drawing. What I can do is I can return a function. I'm going to call this just basically, we're just going to have it print something. We're going to have it print cleaning up. All right, so now when I call draw, now I know it's going to return a function, so I can assign that function to a variable called cleanup. And because I know that cleanup is a function, and in fact, if I want to verify that it's a function, I can use a type of operator. So I can say, what's the type of cleanup? And I know cleanup should be function. So line 25 is going to print a function because the type of cleanup is a function. And when I call this draw function, then it's going to print this out, which is what this is. So because I know that cleanup is a function, I can go ahead and actually use it just as a regular function. So if I invoke cleanup, then it's going to draw and it's going to clean up. So the things to pay attention to here is that functions are just types like numbers and strings, and you can pass them as inputs and also return them as outputs as well. So a function can accept another function as an input, and it can call as many functions as it wants within itself. In this case, draw is calling box, and it can also return a function. And we will be seeing this used in React quite a lot, especially in the newer versions of React. There's a lot of functional programming patterns. So just getting comfortable with functions as first-class citizens, where you can define them, you can pass them around, will be really useful. So to recap, in JavaScript, we define functions in quite a lot of ways. You can give the function a name, they can have 0 or more arguments, and they can do a bunch of stuff and return 0 or more outputs. In this case, we have a function that doesn't take any input, it just prints and it doesn't return anything. In the second case, we have a function box that takes 2 inputs and returns 1 output that is just an object. And in the third case, we have a function that takes a function, it takes another function, which is the box function, it invokes a function, it does some stuff, in this case it just prints it, and then it returns another function. And when we use draw, we pass a function box to it, and we know that draw returns another function, cleanup, and we can call cleanup to do some stuff.